Greetings. This is Skyler Saunders seeing what's current. Today, I'd like to delve into a few issues. One pressing one is, of course, about Title 42. And if you don't know what Title 42 is, it is in regard to the immigration policy that was enacted during the height of the COVID 19 pandemic in 2020 under the Trump administration. Now, it seems that it will be evaporating by the end of the week or sometime this week, and will show that there will be even more of an influx of immigrants coming into America. And I say, come and join the party. You have a person who mowed down 7 or 8 people, and they were just in a refugee camp, or seeking asylum, and where there were tents, and they're just sitting on the curb, and they just got struck. All of them wanted to be free, wanted rights, wanted liberty, were denied that. And on top of that, in the same place, in the same state, Texas, prior, there was a mass shooting with 8 people dead, including the shooter. Now, if there ever was a time period for immigration to be on the top of our lips, or top of our lists of things that are most important, things that are most pressing, is the fact that we should consider the the enormity of the situation with immigrants, because we have so many issues in this country. There are too many regulations and controls, too many different divisions. They call it the divided states of America. In some parts, that's true. But in reality, the United States of America stands for the states being within one another as the Union, much like the Civil War was broken apart with South Carolina when it seceded. No states have seceded, so we're not divided in that regard. But what about the people that want to come to this country? That's what I want to talk about. Why would you want to come to a country with obesity, with inner city schools failing, with rampant acts of violence and force against the other individuals? What would make somebody say, "Yeah, I want to come to America"? It's the fact that they're leaving places like Venezuela, where they're letting loose the animals from the cages in the zoo, and they're eating the flesh of these animals. They're literally going out into the streets and eating rats and the fur, the hides of different animals, because they've run out of food. And if they go to the store and they want to buy soap and toiletries and toothbrushes and toothpaste, it costs $40 or more. And it's a tragedy. It's a shame. It's disgusting. We're not at that level yet. We haven't gotten that low stage yet. We haven't gotten there. There is no God, but thank God. Thank the independent business people. That's who you should thank. Thank all the entrepreneurs. Thank the fact that people still want to come to this country because they know it is the freest country on the planet. It's the noblest country in world history. There's no other nation that even comes close to the United States of America in terms of totality. Yes, other countries have greater freedoms, business-wise. Yes, other countries have greater freedoms socially, but in context, America is the wealthiest nation because of the fact that we are producers for the most part. We are people that produce and produce and produce. Even though it's fun to be called consumers, which we are, but in order to become a consumer, you have to be a producer in the first place. And you got people coming from all kinds of different countries and locales. Costa Rica, Honduras, places like that. Honduras is like the murder capital of the world. And Mexico, and the cartels. And people still stream into this country with the same belief and same idealism that they want to do better. They want to have a better life. They don't want a handout. They don't want to be just paid in, welfare checks. And even if they are paid in welfare checks, I would choose a welfare check going to a family from Honduras or a human, an individual man or woman and their children getting benefits from the United States government rather than a college educated person who just wants to sit on the couch all day and rack up points on his meta game. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that there are so many people that regard this country as an asylum, as a place of refuge, as a place that can promote and continue their own lives. That's what I'm saying. It's important to realize this because a lot of Americans still will begrudge and say that, well, it's not the place to be in America. I'm leaving. I'm out. Well, then go. Leave. Fine. I'm always questioning that statement, that slogan. Love it or leave it. But I've become more warm to it because it's true. Love the principles. Love the founding documents, the Constitution, and of course, even more important and the most important and most profound political document in all of human history, the Declaration of Independence, which should have knocked out, across the world, all monarchies, all socialist countries, all communist countries that would soon arise. It should have ended it right then and there. Sadly, it didn't. We had to go through various wars and different people had to die in the millions because of it. And we're still going through it in a lot of places. But America is still a magnet. It's a magnet country. It attracts more and more people. Now, it doesn't matter how your ancestors got here, maybe on a slave ship, maybe through Elvis Island. I don't know. And it doesn't matter. We're here in this big gumbo pot. And that's the distinction, that it's gumbo. Because the corn doesn't taste like tomatoes, and the tomatoes don't taste like the shrimp, and the shrimp doesn't taste like the sausage. But we're all in one pot. We're all in one melting pot. Different ethnicities, cultures, races, backgrounds. And we're surviving and thriving in certain ways. From the standpoint of a person who was born and raised in America. I was born in the capital of the first state in the United States of America on June 21st, 1988. I'm 34 years old. I'll be 35 next month. I'm an old man. I'm ancient. So with the amount of people, the influx of people that continues to be on the list of different ways to be a United States citizen, it should be like this. To get in this country, it should be super easy. To become a citizen, it should be super hard. What does that mean? It means that it should take, sometimes a decade or more for you to become a United States citizen, for you to know the value system and the virtues that are espoused by this country. It is important that we only share what we know are the principles that America espouses. And that is reason, individualism, and capitalism. That's all America is about. That's all of it. RIC, R-I-C. Just remember that. As opposed to mysticism, collectivism, and altruism, which is an axis of evil. All the world's evils have been brought about because of those three ideas. That's a fact. And if anyone ever tries to say that there's a difference between, or there's no difference between the three virtues of America and the vices that strike against it, that would be an egregious lie. To say that there's no difference between those three and the other three, the six different ideals. So it comes to order that we should pay homage or homage or homage, however that is pronounced. Please correct me. To those robber barons, quote unquote, to the tech giants, to the Silicon Valley, soldiers, the Wall Street warriors, the people that made this country great, that made it a wonderful place to be. Now, of course, we have so many problems, though. We have so many problems. Just look at Chicago. Look at Philly. Look at Detroit. Atlanta. All these different locales have high crime rates and are supposed to be havens for people that immigrate here. They go across the whole country. They start out at the border in the United States and Mexico, and then they branch out. They go to different places, try to find work, try to find jobs, trying to find a better life. That's the key. That's the goal. To try to make your own life better. To make your own life worthy of saying the super oneness. You got one body, you got one mind, you got one life. That's a super oneness. That oneness is what drives people from Venezuela and Peru and Nicaragua and different places like that, because they know that America stands for, despite all of our hangups and different things that hold us back, America stands for more than just freedom. It's freedom of thought, freedom of ideas, freedom of movement, liberty. That's what America stands for. That's why people continue to come over here. They want to see the fact that they can compare and contrast their life from the past to now as an American or American in waiting, going to be American, has a green card, has the ability to foster a relationship with other people and to know their own self-worth. That's the key there. When you have people that don't know how to show enough gratitude for this country, who don't know how to say how wonderful it is to be in this country, despite all our flaws, faults, and flagrant flab and warts and all, we have the ability to take on the task of improving this country. Get rid of the licensing laws. Get rid of the controls. Get rid of the regulations. That's what holds us back. It's ironic. I mean, taxes is one thing, but especially, let's talk about regulations and controls and licensing. Licensing, where you can't even braid hair properly. You can't even cut someone's head. Spike Lee had a documentary called We Cut Heads about barbershops and barbers. They had to get a license. They had to be licensed. If you want to drive a cab in New York City, you have to have a license. How much does that cost? Is it in thousands of dollars now? Ooh, that's why you have the market disruptors, Lyft and Uber. You only need a driver's license, and even then, driver's license shouldn't be held by the state. It should be a private organization that issues licenses. And there'll probably be a lot less lines and a lot less confusion at the DMV if the DMV were privatized. That's where we are. That's the crux of this situation. That's the main ingredient. The fact that we don't have enough to offer these people who want to come here, who have just the slightest idea of what America means. Individualism, the individual. That's what America is. It's all about individualism. We may have never had, full idea of what reason is, and we still don't have a full idea of what capitalism is, and even individualism. We still don't know exactly what it means. But there's a slight, foggy, misty kind of idealism regarding individualism. I am somebody, and I can build something on my own. I can strike out and have the best life for my wife and my husband or my kids, and we're going to make the best of this, no matter what. That's the spirit of America. That's on the back of the license plates in Massachusetts. The spirit of America that's the state. I lived there for a few, months, over a year, almost 2 years. But that's what it's about. That's what it's all about. Yes, that's the only thing that is riding on the fact that we have so much to offer. This is a land of an abundance. This is the land of maximizing opportunity. Key. Let me say that again. America is the land of maximizing opportunity, not just opportunity. It's about creating even greater opportunities and greater chances for you to advance and excel in your life. That takes a lot. And with all our mass shootings, with all our opioid addiction, and all of our, obese people, and all of the different ways that we could be castigated and set aside and said America is living in its worst days and all its best days are behind it. It's just simply not true. The future is bright for America, and could be brighter if we got rid of regulations, controls, and licenses. If the government got out, if we had the ego edging government out. It belongs with the cops, the courts, and the warriors. That's it. That's all we need. And that's how cheap America would be to run the government. Be very cheap. You would have some people not paying their taxes, and they wouldn't go to jail. They wouldn't be fined. But you know what? Guess what would happen? They would be reported. They would be put online. They would be said that they didn't have the right to go in my store, the right to go in my amusement park, the right to get their hair cut, the right to so many different products and services, and their names would be placed on the internet to encourage them, to embolden them to pay their taxes. And taxes are nothing more than payment for governmental services. So those governmental services, the law courts, the military, and the police, are key to our own survival, safety, and thriving. They are key to being what America really stands for. If there ever was a point where we couldn't pay our debts, or that were like our looming debt ceiling issue, it's not even looming, it's right in front of our faces. But we wouldn't even have those hangups. We wouldn't have those issues because we produce. I mean, GDP is a slight indicator of wellness and greatness of a country's and robustness of a country's wealth. Our GDP is what, $20 trillion, 25, 20 trillion. Please forgive me, please. I did not look up the stat. My mind's just flowing on it right now. But if there were no licenses, no regulations, no controls, the GDP would probably be between 40 and 50 trillion dollars a year. And that's just a rough estimate. It may be in the hundreds. Because what regulations and controls and licenses do is throttle people. It throttles the people at the border, the immigrants who are trying to come in, trying to breathe free, the huddled masses, as Miss Lazarus said once upon a time, that's stuck on the Statue of Liberty. And there's so many great immigrants. Ayn Rand, the great philosopher and writer, was an immigrant. Dr. Leonard Peikoff is an immigrant. Dr. Goethe is an immigrant. Dr. Jerome Brooke is an immigrant. These great men and women have shown themselves to be of great character and profound intelligence and superb morality. If it weren't for the fact that this country took in people like the ones I just described, there would be very few, if any, real America. And we must never forget the men and women who were forced over here, and the ridiculous and vicious and horrific nastiness of slavery, which is this country's the original sin. We have to remember that the contributions from Black people, from foundational Black Americans and American descendants of slavery, we have to remember that. We have to remember that we're all not in this together, but we're all in this. Because we have to choose whether we're be together. Every man is, in fact, an island. You make a choice whether you want to branch out, if you want to swim to another island, or if you want to make a road to a different island. Then you can say, okay, that's cooperation, and that's vital and important. But you're still an island. You have to live your own life. You can't live somebody else's brains. You can't use somebody else's lungs. You can't use someone else's stomach. It's all on you. It's all on you. It takes away from the fact that you are your own person, that you have the capacity to be your own individual self. And as a consequence, you have to realize that the immigrants, the migrants that are flooding from these countries, and with Title 42 being knocked out, it will be a grand and great opportunity for us to say, no, we're not doing regulations and controls and licenses anymore, because they are a detriment. They are impediments to what we think of and what we consider are proper ways of living. We don't have the wherewithal to say that regulations are protecting us. They're a good thing. They're in place to keep us safe. And I'm thinking about places like EPA, OSHA, other alphabet soups, the FDA, the DEA, more alphabet soup. We don't need a nanny. America is not a nanny. It's a gun. It's got a big gun, and it will shoot down anything and everything in its path. That's the power of this nation. That's the power of what we call America. And we should stand proud on that fact. We should stand proud on the ideas of being receptive to new ideas. That's the key. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us special. That is what makes America exceptional. And it should not be, taken for granted. It should be regarded as something that is plentiful, bountiful, and abundant. Riches and glory? No. Riches right here on this earth so far. Until we branch out to the moon and Mars, we're still here. The blue origin, as Mr. Bezos would say. We're almost to the point where we have a greater grasp on what it means to be complete human beings. We've got black separatists, white supremacists, and all kinds of people in between, because that's what it is. It's a chessboard. They don't have the other colors, but it's really just black and white, and everybody falls in between. Just like the late great Patrice O'Neill once said, with black, it's black versus white, and Asians chose white, and brown people and red people, for the most part, brown people chose black, but not because they want to, be in solidarity with black people, but they want the black people's spot. They want their spot. That was a joke, but it's just still social commentary within, masked in humor. But that's where we are. Immigrants want to come here. They want to get here. They want to be Americans, in spite of all our ills. And we do have ills. We have very many, but not as much to discourage anybody from joining us. Not that much. Even though it seems like it, you see the statistics. How many mass shootings have we had since the beginning of the year? How many suicides by opioids? How many deaths? It's all disgusting and depressing. But we still fight on. We still are marching on. We're still, within the fight. We're still going strong. And that's, what I was saying with, the black and the white. There was a test in the 1950s and 60s, and I think a little further on even, with white dolls and black dolls that they gave the children. Kenneth, Doctors Kenneth and Mamie Clark of Columbia University, they both made history. He was the first African American man to achieve the PhD in psychology from Columbia, and his wife, was the first African American woman to achieve the PhD in Columbia in psychology. And what they did essentially was they put the children in a test where they gave them a black doll and a white doll and saw which one they had identified with more. And for the most part, it was the black doll got less attention and they identified more with the white doll. There was a specific example where one black child said that that's a nigger and I'm a nigger. So that was the sense of the psychology of a child at that young stage, at that young point in their career, in their lives. They had that sense about them. They had the sense that they didn't have self-worth, that they didn't have a self-esteem. But let me tell you a little something about self-esteem. It's something you have to consider not just as a catchword or a phrase or just not pay attention to the words. Self-esteem. This is something that I was taught when I was a child by my father, and it was instilled in me and reinforced in me in the United States Marine Corps. Self-esteem is for yourself. It seems easy and obvious, but a lot of people forget what it means because they say the words, "Oh, you hurt my self-esteem." No. You don't get hurt. No one can hurt your self-esteem. It's the esteem you have for yourself. It is the esteem you have in your mind of who you are. So damn what a doll looks like. Forget about what color that doll is. You are a human being and a person of worth, given your character and your capacity to think. That's what makes you who you are and the self-esteem that you have to earn and keep, because that's the value of it. Self-esteem is another name for selfishness, or in other words, concern for one's own interests. That's exactly what it means. It doesn't give you a moral estimation. It just gives you what the central idea is when you put it together. So you have doctors Clark, they're going through the system, and I agree to the fact that they had these tests. It's been very important and very revealing just what, the culture at large, what it does to young minds, and what, overall what is being addressed and what is being appreciated or not. That's what is most important here. The fact that you have so many people who would denigrate themselves just based off of a chemical difference, a difference in chemistry. You have more melanin than I do. You're lesser than me. I have more melanin than you. I'm greater than you. Now Dr. Kenneth Clark especially, that's I'm getting this information from New York Times and other locations. But he essentially was an integrationist. And I'm all for integration of government institutions. There should be no segregation in the military. There should be no segregation in government halls of power. There should be segregation in private entities. Private restaurants, hotels, country clubs, and whatever else should all be said, I want to segregate or I want to integrate. It should be up to the owner's discretion. That's the best way forward for America. Not to integrate everything, only government entities. Government should have no mind or no eye towards black, white, brown, red, yellow. It should take in everyone. But if you have your own restaurant and you don't like a Vietnamese person coming in your restaurant, you should say no, thank you. No, get out of here. You got to get out. If you don't want a black person in your synagogue, you should be able to say nope. You have to leave. You can't stay here. If you don't want a white person in your barbershop or in your hair salon, you'd say, I'm sorry, you can't be here. That would be a proper response. And especially, more importantly, at the root of all this, the school system, because that's what the doctors Kents were worried about. They were thinking about the school system, and they had a very influential role in playing with the Brown versus Board of Education. They had the idea to ensure that there would be people who would carry on the ideas of changing America's facial look. They failed in a sense, and he even felt it too, Dr. Kenneth Clark. He felt that he was a pessimist, and he didn't want to be, but he felt that he had a series of failures throughout his 90 years on this earth. So when you think about integration and you think about self-esteem, you have to think about the fact that no one can rob you of your own self-esteem. You have to have the wherewithal, the esteem for your own self. You have to be selfish. That's proper. That's the goal. To be a selfish, rationally selfish, self-interested human being. And it goes back to the immigration. They had enough self-esteem to say that I want to come to America, even though it's divided, even though the political structure is a mess, even though everything it seems like it's going down. They said the same thing we never stop complaining. And that's a good thing. That's healthy. If we said, oh, everything's hunky-dory, yay, well, that's great, well, wonderful, we would be we'd be even in a bigger mess. We have to objectively say how things are terrible. We have to objectively say how things are a lot better than even 50 years ago, in the 1970s, 40 to 50 years ago. The 1970s was one of the worst decades of all time in American history. Those gas shortages, the Nixon mess, and Watergate, and the Iran coming out of its shell and being a menace in the world stage. I mean, this all happened in the 70s. 70s was a terrible time in some respects. Had great music. The best music came from the 70s, probably. I mean, there was still rock and roll, and there was rock and jazz, there was disco, there was the beginnings of hip hop, R&B, soul, all of that. But it was terrible in a lot of respects. And we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge how great life is right now. How we can tell a computer to turn on with our voice. We can start a car with just touching the side panel with our fingertip, with the imprint of our finger. But to dolls, just black and white dolls. Think about that. About 60, almost 70 years ago. Think about the fact that there's so many people that will consider the fact that saying a white doll is more beautiful than a black doll, or a black doll is more beautiful than a white doll. When in reality, everyone has their own specific idea of what beauty is. But there has to be a criteria. The way that noses are set, the way that eyebrows are set, the way that lips are set, and the high cheekbones and ear structure, and all that comes into a human face or a human figure. White people have a certain way of looking, for the most part. Black people have a certain way of looking. White people have pointy noses, for the most part, and thin lips. Black people have broad noses and thick lips, for the most part. And that's not even true at all for everyone. Because yellow people have thick lips and thin lips and wide, broad noses and thin noses. And red and brown people too. They say beauty lies in the beholder. Well, it does, but there has to be a criteria for it. It has to be a criterion that we have to look at, or a set of criteria. We have to consider all of the facts that we're just biology. I mean, I got that from the show 6 Feet Under. He said, we're all they're undertakers, and that's a great place to understand things, because that's the final equation. That's the final equality. Death. That's when we're all equal. Any attempt to make us all equal or integrated or any other like fails miserably and is evil, because we're not all alike. Some of us are short, some of us are tall, some of us are smart, some of us are dumb. Some of us look good in the face, some people are ugly. That's supreme inequality, and that's a beautiful thing, to be unequal. To be equal is unfair. Inequality is the beauty, is the key. To learn that, to know that. I mean, there's people like Pol Pot who flooded the cities and drew people to the countryside and killed people who had glasses on their faces just because they looked like they were intelligent. How ugly and disgusting is that? That's where we are, though. That's the point at which we don't have any recourse for tumbling backwards. We have the chance to say that we're more than just black baby dolls and white baby dolls. We're ready. We should be ready to accept each other as individuals, not as groups. Black people aren't better. White people aren't better. The individual black person is better than the white person. The individual white person is better than the black person. Given people's gender or race or orientation, there are so many people that are, part of the fabric of America that make this place better. So many people who cash in on the fact that they can be a better person. And that's far away and away from the doll study. Because the doll study was trying to say, that they should integrate the schools. They shouldn't. Schools should be left private, especially. All schools should be privatized. There should be no, other than the war colleges, which should be run by the government. Every other institution should all be privatized, from preschool to PhD and beyond, professional degree. They should have our best interests at hand, the leaders of this nation. We vote them in, and then they are to uphold the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. They are here to not be bureaucrats and sit back and make up silly laws and disgusting laws and regulations. They should be here to aid us, to not be divisive, to not show a sense of slicing the country in half, red versus blue, or anything in between. What this country stands for is an immaculate way of being an individual. It's a clean and clear cut way of saying I'm worthy of being a human being. That's all. That's all it is. That's all America is supposed to be and has been and should be. We just haven't fully understood it yet. That's why we have that phrase, more perfect union. It's not perfect. We don't have a perfect union, but we can make it more perfect. We can do better. We can strive for perfection. We can strive for making a system that rewards the great and punishes the people that only want to mooch off and be leeches on people. And look at the system that creates from the doll situation. I mean, it starts at a young age. It said, I'm not worthy. I'm not good. Look, this white doll's better. I should be white. It reminds me of a scene from Precious. I mean, that was a horrific movie, but it had some very deep points sometimes. She stares in the mirror. She's a big black woman, just huge, very obese black woman. She stares in the mirror and she sees a very thin, slender, beautiful in the face white woman. That's very similar to the baby doll theory, the baby doll test. So many people wake up and feel that they are less than, that they're not worthy, that something is holding them back, and it's really themselves. You can't blame anyone else. You can't take on anyone else's esteem for you. That's why it's called self-esteem. But people want to continue to say, oh, she hurt my self-esteem. He's taking my self-esteem away from me. I can't deal. I can't go on. Be quiet. Don't stop that. It's not for you. There should be a difference between what people will say about the white and black baby dolls. There should be a difference because, like I said, integrating school systems was not good for the reasons that people gave, because the blacks would take over, because they're violent, because they're criminal ridden. No, it's because it's an individual thing. To have a school that is for private and people. You want to have an all black school, have an all black school. You want to have an all white school, have an all white school. But don't have that enforced. Don't have that enforced by the government. The government should only protect the individual rights of those schools and the administrators and the different teachers and students and staff. That's it. That's all it should do. It shouldn't be the mediator. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be the cause for making it integrated school and protect the segregation or protect integration. Government should play no role in that. None whatsoever. And that's where we are right now. That's the point at which we've discussed something so important as self-esteem, self-worth, and how young black children view themselves. How they would want, like in Toni Morrison's book, The Bluest Eye, what happens to a very beautiful young black child who wants blue eyes. And even Miss Morrison herself, the late great Toni Morrison, she said, she knew somebody that said that. She was gorgeous, coal black, gorgeous. And she said, I always wanted blue eyes. And she said, why? You're beautiful. That's where we have to be. That's that question, why, destroys all kinds of altruism, all kinds of collectivism and mysticism. Why? Because that's what it is. That's what segregation and integration, anything forced by the government, is completely out of whack. It says that certain people should get favor over others. And of course, you've seen the various photos, the white drinking fountain, the black drinking fountain, the whites only song, the colors only sign. That should only be in reality. That's what it should be. Whites only, colors only, and see what happens. See what happens when the markets go into that. Think about Walmart. If Walmart said blacks only, Walmart is almost $1 trillion company. Trillion with a T. See how much sales, how much revenue it would generate. How much profit it would generate if it said whites only. And it was protected by the government. If it said reds only, if it said yellows only, if it said browns only, protected by the government. And I'm saying that's possible, and that's should be. It should be. Well, let's see what happens, though. Let's just see what happens when Walmart decides to do that, or Nike, or Apple, or Facebook. Everybody, anybody says Alphabet, Google, YouTube says nope. We're only catering to yellow people now. Sorry. The government shall uphold that and see what the marketing does. See how long Alphabet will stay in business with that. And they may. There's a whole lot of yellow people in the world. There's 2 billion Chinese people. And among them, there are a whole lot of other yellow people. So the black doll and the white doll test, they really opened up a door, even though it was not in the best sense, but it really cracked open the door to see just what the psychology was of young black children. See what they really felt and thought of themselves. To see if they knew or thought that they would be better than someone else, or if they were worthy of being themselves. What would it take for them to be the reality-based, completely reason-based ideal? How would that function? How would that show people that they're supposed to be on the level of a thinking human being? And around the ages of 7 and 8, you have the age of reason. That's the age where you have a system in your mind where you know right from wrong, you know the differences between good and bad, you know what is evil and what is not evil, what is good, what is not good. And these children were even younger, I think. I think they're in their, 4 to 5, maybe 5 or 6. And Doctors Clark wanted to just understand better, and what their premise and what their execution was, remain and understanding better what the integration system would mean, and what it would feel like for the children. But they should have considered how well they would think. That's where I think the black doll and the white doll test really had a problem, because it didn't consider their thoughts. It considered their feelings. If I feel like I'm less than this white baby, I feel that I have an affinity towards this white baby. I feel like this black baby is ugly and less than. And again, the late great Paul Mooney, he had a whole bit on this doll's test. He was saying, they asked questions of the children. He was saying how, which baby doll, which color uh commits the most school shootings? The white one, and stuff like that. I mean, he just went on a tear with that. Which one is likely to overdose on opioids? The white one. And it's just a sad state of affairs. That's another point too about the immigrants trying to come over to America. You know, we have the opioid crisis. Lowered the life expectancy, among other factors, suicide and car wrecks and heart disease, of course, which is number one across the world. Number one killer in all of the world, and especially America, is heart disease. Something to consider, which can be brought on and exasperated by smoking cigarettes. And we still have people trying to come over to this country. We still have people that want to see the fireworks. They want to see the party. They want to see the fiesta that's going on in this country. Presidential scandals, everything. They still wish to be here. Now, they may need a black doll and a white doll test. The immigrants, they might be brown skinned for the most part, but they may need a test to see not whether one color is better or not, but whether to get rid of the regulations, licenses, and controls. That should be a test. What do you think? What do you think should happen to America? Should it have regulations, controls, and licenses, and continue on the wayward path that we're rolling on? Or should we stand up proudly and say that we are individuals and we are rational and we can take care of ourselves? We don't need a nanny state to say, oh, you can't smoke that, you can't drink that, you can't eat that, you can't go to this school, you can't go to that school. Government is a gun. It's a huge gun. It's got nukes. We're in the top 5 most nukes. I think we're second or third. Russia has the most. But I mean, we're going against a whole government system that can lock us up for not paying a tax, that can disrupt our businesses, can destroy our lives. That's how ugly it can get. That's how disturbing this whole setting can be. So, in conclusion, I have to say that the connection between immigration and the black and white doll test is that we have to have self-esteem. It is important, it is vital, and it is something that makes us all who we are and value ourselves to the extent our actual Americans and that we are proud to be that way. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.